Hi guys, this is Stacy, and today on Homeschool for the Soul, we have the pleasure of being with Dr. Lauren Franks, who's going to help us answer some questions, provide some guidance, share some tools with us on how we can be caring for our mental health as well as the mental health of the people in our homes right now. So, Lauren, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are so honored to have you with us. Can you tell us a little bit about, for people who don't know, who you are, your credentials, as well, like professional as well as like family would be super great.
Yeah, sure. So I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and I got my doctorate from APU. And so I've been licensed for about 3 years. I've been conducting therapy for about 10 years at this point. And my specialty is working with kids. So I identify as a child psychologist. And so I work with little ones all the way through adolescence. So my youngest clients have been 2 years old, and my oldest clients are around 20 years old. And that's kind of where my sweet spot is, working with anything from attention and behavioral issues to severe trauma, or major mood disorders. So it kind of runs the gamut, but with little ones is where my passion is, and I think where my gifts fell as well. So that worked out. I also have 2 little ones of my own at home. I am married, and my husband and I have a almost 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. So I am getting to see child development in my own life as well as in my clients' lives, which sometimes mirror each other and are really fun, and sometimes create a lot of burden to carry. So I want to talk with parents a little bit today about like, how do we carry the burdens of our children and also take care of ourselves?
Love that. Thank you. And if you do not you, Lauren, but people watching, if you have not met and or seen her children in real life, they are amazing, and ask awesome questions and are super fun, tiny people. I like them a lot. I think not just because you're a doctor, but also because you are raising tiny humans. It's amazing how different you get to meet with different clients all the time, but you're also living with and raising 2 tiny humans, and you have a husband that are all, I'm sure they have similarities and nuances, but also so different.
Yeah.
And yet, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I think every parent knows that, if you have multiple kiddos at home, you feel like you're the same parent, but your kids are very, very different individuals.
That's amazing. I think it's so important to remind ourselves of that, because sometimes we feel like, oh, we have the same rules, our kids are raised the same. Why are they so different? You're a trained person, and that's happening in your house too. It's a neat thing to notice and to note. So Lauren, right now we're all living through something completely unprecedented. No matter how old we are, how young we are, we've not gone through something like this in our lives. And when we are, maybe as parents, the best way to start with it is if we have a toothache, or if our kids, break their leg, we go to the dentist, we go to the doctor, we figure out how to fix an ailment. But how do we as grownups know when we might be not in a great mental health spot and or need to talk to someone or seek help? What would be some things that we could be looking out for?
Yeah. And I think that, Real Life's been doing a good job of talking about that stuff this week and previous messages that have been, out there for people, that it's important to keep tabs on that stuff, right? That like there is a certain level of stress and pain that everyone goes through in life. And then there's a tipping point where that kind of starts to get to places where you're not feeling relief. If you have been in a low place where you're feeling hopeless or unsure or overwhelmed, and you've tried the things that usually make you feel better, you've talked to trusted loved ones, you've been in prayer, you've been exercising, you've been doing those things that normally can bring you back to baseline. And if they're not working, then that's where you go, okay, something's different right now. Maybe I need to try something different that I haven't before. And maybe that means reaching out to a mental health professional to try to sort through and also help you assess, is this severe? Is this something that can be remedied fairly simply? Kind of what things are at. But I think therapy is never going to be harmful. Sometimes it just kind of keeps you where you are, but it's never gonna be harmful to you. So I think if you're noticing that your normal things aren't cutting it, that's when you need to reach out.
And how do we know, thank you, very helpful. How do we know that whether or not we're in a good spot? And most of us would say that we're probably not in a good spot,
Right.
because we don't have our normal coping tools, besides that, like, we can barely go out of our houses, or some people it's retail therapy, whatever it may be. But how do we also know whether or not the people we're living with are okay, if we are not quite sure ourselves, or if we feel ourselves kind of sliding into a place of not good health, I guess?
Yeah. So I think it's really important right now for us all, while we're stuck at home, while life is totally different than it's ever been, to not always jump to our regular conclusions about what's causing a behavior or a mood. So whether that's for us as the adults in the house, or whether that's for our children, we're probably seeing a lot of irritability, and assuming that that's coming from normal things, right? Like, oh, my 2-year-old's throwing a tantrum because he wants apple juice, not milk. Or I'm crying because this commercial was really emotional, when really it's like, actually, there's more going on right now. And so, yes, 2-year-olds sometimes cry because they get milk and not juice. And yes, sometimes I cry because a commercial is emotional. However, is that actually what's happening to me right now? Like, am I crying more often? Are they tantruming more often? And like I was saying before, if our normal strategies aren't working, that's going to cue us into like, oh, this is coming from a different place, right? So like my daughter was crying today because she couldn't, what was she trying to do? I think she was trying to, get a cap off of a pen or something, a marker that she was using. And she couldn't get it to attach to the back of the marker the right way. And she melted down. She threw the marker on the ground and was like, nothing's working. But it wasn't about the marker, right? Yes, in the moment it was. And that's probably what she thought it was about. But I can look at it and go, okay, this is not something she normally freaks out about. She's doing that a lot more often right now. It's because nothing's working, right? She feels like nothing is going the way that it's supposed to. And so little things like the cap of a marker are going to kind of set her off more. So I think we have to kind of pay attention to like, is this normal? And do I need to react in a way that's different than normal, right? So there's times I'm a big proponent of active ignoring. So if my child's doing something that's disruptive but isn't dangerous, I'm going to try to redirect or do something else so that I'm not reinforcing that negative behavior. But this is not the opportunity for that. This is a moment for me to go, oh, I need to validate. I need to let you know that things are really hard right now. And you're right. It feels like nothing's going right.
Goodness, that's so good, because on a regular Tuesday, when all of the things in your life are fine, you also would know maybe she's tired. It's been a long day, but it's not just that right now for her, right? We talked about that you're married and that you are a doctor. You and your husband are both working from home, and typically your kids are not home with you, and you don't typically work from home, right? So how has that either added stress, been a blessing on your life, and what are the things that you've seen that could or done that could help people at this time?
Yeah. So my husband and I both are working full time, always have, and our kids are usually in preschool/daycare. And so they're not, and we're still working. We've been very blessed and fortunate that he has been able to do the bulk of his work the first half of the day, and then most of my clients are the second half of the day, because they're all kiddos and usually they come after school and we just haven't changed that. So we're tag teaming and that is working for the most part. But it's really stressful because I'm now mom / preschool teacher from, 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then I'm psychologist from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. or whatever. And then I'm still doing bedtime and, all that good stuff. So it's exhausting. And same for him. It's just reverse, he's working hard in the morning and still he's also in the Army Reserve. So he still has to keep up with his physical fitness, even though gyms are closed and things like that. So it's a lot. I think it's really helpful that we have each other to kind of support one another. I think it's been really, really helpful to set up structure for the kids. So the kids know that like Monday through Friday, we don't watch cartoons in the morning. That on the weekends we do. Like that's just how it was when they were going to preschool, So even though I'm tempted some days to be like, yes, just turn on the TV so I can rest a little bit longer, I'm trying really hard not to, because the more structure they have, the more predictability they have, and predictability equals safety for kids. So if we can provide that for them in a time that is really unpredictable for the rest of the world in the major context, that's helpful. So I like that we've been doing that. As a caveat to that, I will say last Thursday was a day that I woke up and was like, we're not doing school today. Like I don't have it in me to be excited and energetic and interesting enough to keep you guys engaged. So we're not doing that today. Like we're going to get out the Play-Doh and we're going to try to keep the TV off for a little bit longer. And then you know what? It's just going to be what it is. And that's okay too. And I want parents to know that too, that like your kids might need a break and you might need a break and your kids might need a break from you just as much as you need a break from them. So it's okay to have days or moments within the day where you go, okay, we're going to do our own thing, or we're going to do something that's just silly and fun. But I do think having a structure and a routine and a rhythm is really helpful.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. Establishing a routine and rhythms, but also giving yourself and your kids the grace to know that, and this is a time where some of those things fall apart, because that's also real life. That's not just in this season, right? It's helpful for your kids to know that you are going to be consistent in their lives with expectations, with love, with affirmation, with routine, as much as right now, because there are things that are changing that they don't even know and can't control. I love that. That was so, so good. So you mentioned there are patterns or behaviors that we can look for, maybe bigger reactions, maybe up as well as down, right? That our kids, elementary, so tiny people, elementary kids or adolescents could be having right now. How would you suggest, because we all parent differently, how would you suggest that we maybe break it down in those 3 life stages? How can we best address those things? So notice them, but also address them with our kids so that we can then decide, do they maybe need to talk to a professional, or are we the right person? Because we are all they have right now, but how do we go at those 3 stages, and then what next?
Okay. And so we're looking at like littles, and then what are our 3 stages?
So like 5 and younger, then like
elementary
6,
to early
yeah.
middle. Okay.
Yes.
And then, okay, cool.
Yes.
So I would say for your really little ones, it's a whole lot of what we call reflection, and which just basically means repeating things back. So letting them know that they are heard, showing them what good listening looks like, and making sure that they know that you're paying attention to them. So like when my son is like, but no one will play Paw Patrol with me, I don't actually have to fix that. I can just be like, oh, no one's playing Paw Patrol with you. Like just show them that you heard them. Like, and then maybe add in a little narrating of like, you're really sad because nobody wants to play Paw Patrol right now. Or, oh, that's frustrating because no one wants to play Paw Patrol right now. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, they're going to move on to the next thing after that, because they just need to know that you heard them. 1 time out of 10, they're going to throw a big old fit and you're going to have to figure out if you play Paw Patrol or not. But most of the time the validating and the pausing works. And then I would say for your elementary kids, similar, but like bump up your developmental tone a little bit, right? So like, oh yeah, it's really hard when no one wants to play the video game you want to play and your brother and sister want to do something different than you, right? Like that's really hard. And not jumping too quickly into the like, okay, so what's something that you could do? Or, well, but at least this, right? We want to be really careful. I want to encourage parents to make sure that when you're validating your kids, if you want to jump to problem solving mode, make sure you're doing it with an and, not a but. So it's not, oh yeah, this is really hard, but you have 100 things in your room you could go play. It's, yeah, this is really hard. And when you're ready, there's a bunch of other choices for you, right? So that we're not negating the validating that we're doing, but we're still offering some sort of productive next step for them.
Gosh, that's so good. I love that. I love the and.
Yeah. And yeah, not but. We always do and. And then for your older kiddos, it's a lot of like just opening doors, but you can't pull them through the door. So for example, your kiddo is staying in their room all day long and on their phone or on their iPad. And you're like, hey, it kind of seems like you're not feeling great today. If you want to talk, I'll be out in the living room. Right. So like you're opening that door and saying like, I'm noticing you and I care about you. But as soon as you try to yank them through that door to force them to talk to you, it gets risky. And you know, obviously all you parents know your kids better than I do. And so for some kids you can do that. And sometimes you know that you need to make that next step through the door to get them to engage. But for a lot of adolescents, the second you try to make them do something, they don't want to do it anymore. So those are kind of the little tips. If we're keeping it brief here, that's where I would start.
Oh, those are so, so good. So with preschool up to elementary, you say validate, slow it down, affirm, and then elementary age, acknowledge it at their level, and not but. So good. And then opening the door with adolescents. So, so good. Okay. And then I didn't ask you about this. I know it's toward the older side of who you practice care for, but what about college students that are home and have been living outside of their house? How do we engage with them? Because they're grown-ups and they've been operating on their own and now they're home. They miss their friends. Their lives are a mess. Not a mess. I shouldn't say that, but they're just so, that's not what we signed up for. It's not what they signed up for. How do we engage them like the young adults that they are, but like we still have rules in our house or we have expectations? What would that look like for that age group?
Yeah. And I want to say whether it's for adolescents or, you know, older adolescents, young adults, there's a lot, you can continue using that and statement where it's like, I know this is hard and this is the rule. Because there's not really room for negotiating in certain scenarios. And the more that you negotiate, the more that you provide this facade that there's potentially the opportunity to change the outcome. And that's just going to be defeating for anybody. So if you can just like pick your script almost of like, hey, I know you really hate, I don't know, putting your towel back on the towel rack in the bathroom or whatever. And that's what we do at this house. And if you don't, then I'm going to just throw it in the like dirty laundry, or I don't know, you know, some sort of simple consequence.
No, that's so good.
I also think for any age range, and you can probably do this most authentically with college students, but for any age child, like it's okay to show them that you're going through it too, you know, like, and not in the like, well, my life's hard too, but in just in the like, connection piece of like, yeah, I get it. You didn't want to come home from college early. You know, I didn't want to work from home, you know, like I get it. Like this is hard. Or to even model it for them outside of their context, right? So maybe you finish a Zoom call with somebody and you go like, ugh, that would have been so much better in person. This is so like exhausting for me to have to do things in a different way. And that just like gives them that cue of like, oh, this is normal. My parents are going through something similar to me. and that like it's okay to talk about it.
Love that. Oh my gosh, so good. So one of the things we would love to share with people is, and for you to provide insight on, what are the things that, now that we have been spending time with our kids, and we more than we ever have, we might notice things, behaviors that we didn't notice before, whether it is that they, it could be just so many things. Maybe that they're harder on themselves than we realize. Maybe it's that they don't reach out to their friends if they're, adolescents. Maybe it's that they are having a hard time not being with their friends, but we don't realize that's why they're so much more irritable than we're used to. What are some things that we should really be looking out for, not in a scary way, but almost in like how do we know when we are, you gave us great tips on how we can know when we are in a spot where we need to ask for help, but how do we know when we ask for help with our kids right now? Because all their emotions are bigger than we're used to, and so much more time. So we just might see things and think, oh my goodness, is that something we should be worried about? Right. And not beat ourselves up. How did I miss that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been working with a few people recently where that becomes the case, right? The parents are like, oh my gosh, this is worse and this is worse and this is worse. And like, I thought we were making progress on these goals and here we are again. Some of that, like, you're going to have to give your kids some grace. You're going to have to give yourself grace when like you don't know the answer, because you've never parented in a pandemic before. So of course you don't know the answer. And they've never lived through it either. So there's certain things that like a lot of kids, when they are saying they're bored, like they're also feeling lonely. And when they are acting really irritable, like they're grieving the loss of what's been going on and the trauma that we're all experiencing. So I would say, like, try not to jump to conclusions. Honestly, I think when we're in the midst of the trauma or the stressor, I guess we could say, you're going to see things flare up. You're going to see behaviors that you might not normally see. And some of the stuff that I've already mentioned is going to be enough to get them through that. Life's going to, slowly things will come back that fulfill them and make things feel more stable and secure and enjoyable to them. I think when you have kids who are starting to show a lot of physical symptoms, so like we call them somatic symptoms, psychological, demonstrations, physical demonstrations of your psychological distress, right? So if you're getting constant persistent stomach aches, constant headaches, things that you can't, like, they're getting enough sleep, they're drinking enough water, they're doing, and they're still having these physical symptoms, then you might want to say, okay, this is a more pressing issue. We'd like to relieve these symptoms sooner than later. So maybe we need to call in the help of someone else. I think also, if you are just not naturally like, let's say you have little ones and you're not naturally the playing type, you're not big on the imaginary play, like you love to read, you can, you enjoy your kids, but you're not big on playing. Well, play is kids' language. Like, that's how they communicate so much more than just their words. And so maybe you just need to know your strengths and know the resources that you have available to you, and either call in, you can play over Zoom like that. I'm doing it with most of my clients right now. So call in a grandparent that can do that. Or if that's, if there's not another person that can do that, maybe you want to pick a professional who has training to identify what that play means, right? Like, I speak play as a language, so I can do that in a little bit of a different way than you might be able to do it yourself.
Right. That's so good and so important. And things that, like, when you say it, it sounds so simple. And when we're in it, it might feel so defeating and, oh my gosh, we don't know what to do. But then breaking it down that way makes it seem so much more manageable, right? Because we're trying, like you said, working from home, trying to parent, trying to be all the things. And then feel like, oh my goodness, are we feeling in this way? But knowing that there are things that we can do to take care of ourselves, recognize that we might need some help, and or that our kids might need some help, and or that it might not be as bad as we think, are huge, huge helps.
And, I want to make sure too that, like, if things get to a crisis place, right? Like, if your adolescents or your middle schoolers, if you notice that there's detrimental behavior happening, if there's self-harm happening, if there's talks of self-harm happening, like that's not stuff that we take lightly, and that's not stuff to get mad at them for. It's not stuff to tell them is wrong. Like that's the stuff where you go, okay, let's call in some extra help, right? So those are obviously the red flags. Or if you're finding that as a parent yourself, you're doing things that you don't normally do and your anger is really hard to control, like there are hotlines to call. There are suicide hotlines. There are parent crisis hotlines. Like, please don't wait until something terrible happens. Like, use the resources that you have.
So good. Thank you so much. If there is one source of hope or advice that you could close with today about, like, we're going to get through this, but not like that, what is something you would want parents to know when we're closing today that would give them a sense of hope and that it's going to be okay?
I have to pick one.
You can pick two.
Let's see. So I think that the most important factor in kids being resilient is the people that are around them. And so I think if you can take care of yourself enough to be able to continue to show them that they are important and that you care about them, then no matter what else goes on during this time, like they're going to remember that and they're going to hold on to that. And that's going to be an incredible asset to them as they grow up. So if you can make sure that they know they're important and they know you care about them, that's, I think, the key. And knowing that sometimes you caring about them is not you giving them what they want. It's knowing what is most important for them and following through with that. So it's not, that's the, like, you might not get to sleep in every day. I might make you wake up and do homework, even though you have all day long to do it, because I know it's good for your body and your brain to like keep a routine. So I think if you can maintain a good connection with them, show them they're loved and important, and that you care for them, that's going to be key. And then let them be surrounded by other adults that can provide that for them once this is all over. Like, don't hesitate to say, yes, now please grandparents, or now please auntie, or now please friends from church, like when it's safe to do so, call upon your village that will help you raise that child, because the other people around them will be beneficial to them too.
Oh my gosh, that's gold. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you to your family for serving our country, because you have one person who is an active reserve, but that means your whole family serves. So thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time to share your wisdom and your clinical wisdom, but also just your heartfelt wisdom. We are so, so thankful for you and your time today. And again, your sacrifice to this country and for all of us. We get to have conversations like this because of what Chad and his fellow officers do every single day, even when they're not, out doing the things. So thank you again. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It's been so good.
Sure. I hope it's helpful to somebody.
I know it will be. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Stay well.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.